Hi, my name is Joe Squardella, and we think it's a privilege to be here. We really appreciate the board inviting us. My guess is whatever you're doing for a living, you may have never thought you'd be eating breakfast and talking about sewers at the same time. But we hope our intention today is to provide you with a tool that you may not have previously had, because nothing will stop a sale quicker than a broken sewer line, a broken drain through a wall, or something to that effect. So we're here to educate you a little bit. Hopefully, we're not going to stand here and drone on. I'm a Newport kid. I grew up I went to De La Salle on Bellevue Avenue. In fact, if anybody knows Joe Rose at Remax, he was my college roommate, and I graduated high school with him. And so Joe and I have been very close for many years. I looked at some stats, and it looks like the average sale price of a home in Newport is about $660,000. It looks to me like the price has gone down from last year by about 17%, and we're selling about 400 houses a year here. So we're in a very competitive market. And I think the last thing in the world we want you to lose, and I know you do, is to lose a house over something you may have never thought of. So we're here today to provide you with that. Last thing is, I've been here a short time. I've been with Royal Flush for about 4 months. My job is to drive around Rhode Island and talk to people about what we do. And I just want to say, if you're ever going to hire a person to drive around Rhode Island and talk to people and it's not me, you've hired the wrong person. Because I love Rhode Island and I love working with people. But one thing I realized, I was in the job about 3 months, and Providence College, we're doing a job at Providence College at the end of June. They have a broken pipe under Alumni Hall. Who would want to bust that place up? So they're hiring us to come in and fix it. But anyway, I was invited to speak to 6 engineers at Providence College 3 months into my job. And I was just at the point where I was telling my wife that I know everything. God, this is easy to learn. I know it. And by the grace of God, I invited John to come with me. And when we walked out of the meeting, he said, "How do you think that went?" And I said, "I just feel terrible." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Because I thought I knew everything until now." John did most of the talking. So today, John's going to do most of the talking because he's the guy that really knows this business inside out. This is John Overy. He's my boss. I'm 68, he's 38. And it's the greatest relationship I ever had, because for the first time in my life, except for my wife, I do what I'm told. John Overy.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Again, thanks for having us. Thanks for Hannah and Lisa for inviting us and kind of getting us involved in this. And so we're not going to take a ton of time, so this way we can be a little more interactive, a little excited, hopefully, again, talk about some crappy pipes. So we're going to get to a quick little agenda of what we're going to review, and then I'd like some interaction. I'm going to ask you guys a lot of questions. We're going to have some open questions at the end. I'm sure you guys will probably think of maybe a scenario or a transaction that happened, that came up, whether in your personal life, obviously here with your professional careers, friends or family members might have had these type of issues. So at the end, feel free to shoot any questions that come up, anything like that. So we're going to start with a fun fact, some plumbing terms, a brief history about our company and what we do. This is really, I want the most interaction. I have an idea of what a good realtor versus a great realtor is, but I hopefully think most of the people in this room would consider themselves to be great realtors. And I really want to hone in on what they think the difference between that is. Talk about our technology, which is called Epoxy pipelining or trenchless technology. Our process, the benefits, and then a little video. And so our first fun fact before I click on it, the state of New York has the oldest average properties of any state in America. So this is from a property built in 1600 to new construction today. The average age of that property is 63 years. Okay? Every property, commercial, industrial, residential, every single property. Who thinks or who knows what the next 2 states are with the oldest properties in America? Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Okay? The average age of our properties for everything is 59 to 57 years. So how does that tie into what we do? Is old pipes. The average age or expectancy of a pipe in the ground is 50 years. Okay, so what that stat really means is any home built before 1973, technically the pipe has reached its life expectancy. How many percentage of the properties we think we buy and sell are built before 1973?
Vast majority.
We think probably maybe 75%, 90%, 80%, right? That's a lot. You know, we got to think we don't really have a massive new construction boom in our area due to land, obviously prices of building materials, things of that nature. So that's something that we have to think about. Now, not every pipe has failed just because it's 50 years old, but technically, again, 50 years ago, the design life of that pipe is only 50 years. So really, I think a pretty cool stat, maybe something eye-opening to everybody here who owns their own property, or certainly when they're buying and selling. Something to really think about. Joe, I'm going to have you talk about some of these common plumbing terms. A big part of what we want to do is just educate you on some brief information here. And so, Joe, talk about some of these common plumbing terms that you guys might have heard
I
of.
feel like he's testing me. You know what I mean? But, you know, there's a thing called a vertical stack, typically inside a house, right? Starts at a toilet, usually on the second floor. And that stack, it's usually a cast iron stack, about 4 inches typically, that runs through the house. We looked at Miramar with Kirby Perkins, and they have roof drains. They have a roof drain at Miramar that is leaking into a horsehair wall with ornate crown molding. So rip up the molding in the wall, which can't be replaced, or hire oil flush to line the pipe. So, but you know, vertical stack, typically inside the house, typically cast iron, and it runs through the house to the drain that goes out to the street. A house trap. House traps, that is a typical look at a house trap. House traps were put outside houses years ago, and the real purpose of a house trap, they're twofold. Keep the rodents out of the house, you know, and also to stop sewer gases from coming in the house. Now, each piece of plumbing in your house typically has its own, trap. However, traps cause a lot of problems. If they're outside the house and we're being asked to repair or line a pipe, the trap has to go. There's a property on Narragansett right now that we're looking at with coastal management, property management. And we're looking at that property because they have a house trap outside the house. The thing has to come out. We would take it out, replace it with a piece of pipe and line it. Of course, your main sewer line, I think everybody knows what that is. You know, everything in the house drains into that line, and that line goes out and meets the street. Now, I have met with the utilities folks here in Newport, Mr. Schultz, Rob Schultz, and a few other guys down there. And there is talk, not only in Newport, but all around Rhode Island, of ordinances for new sewers, right? And new sewers mean that if those ordinances go through, there's a very good chance that in all the towns in Rhode Island, if you sell a house or build a house, they are going to want to inspect the sewer lines before, because now they got a brand new sewer. You're like buying a car with bad tires on it. They want to make sure what we call laterals, those sewers from the house to the street, are the responsibility of the owner. I think we all know that. So those laterals from the house to the street are going to have to be clear and pass inspection. Finally, the most interesting thing, Newport almost exclusively has a thing called crocs. So a crock is it's a catch basin, and if you've ever heard the term crock of, you can say it, I can't, you know, that's where we think that came from. We're pretty sure. I've been called that a few times in my life, typically by my wife, but, you know, but I would tell you that we don't run into these things almost anywhere but here. So we still run into them here. And, you know, I walk around Newport all the time, work with a lot of businesses here, and I can tell you that Newport is a treasure trove for us because we have pipes that are hundreds of years old, and we have businesses, the last thing they want to do is shut down in the month of July, right? So, you know, that's why Sardella's, St. George's, St. Joe's Church, the Marriott, the Gap, we've done work at all these places and more. So we wanted you to just be aware of that. And now I'm going to turn back over to my boss here.
Does anybody have a crock on their own property? Has anybody heard of a crock or know what it is? Yeah. I think whoever designed these had something on the guy in Newport during installation, whether it was bribery or not, because again, they're only in this town. And at the time, I'm sure they thought they were state of the art. This was the greatest thing ever. Never seen them anywhere else. So just a quick history of our company. We're a family business. This is my father-in-law, Jim Watson. Jim has a really cool story. He was born in Scotland, has a 100% Scottish accent. In the late 80s, early 90s, he moved to South Africa for work with family members. I am married to Jim's daughter. That's where his daughter and son were born in South Africa. They won a lottery to come to America and become American citizens. They escaped the apartheid in South Africa. It was very, very dangerous at the time. And he was a plumber by trade in Scotland, a plumber by trade in Africa, and came here and started his own plumbing company, Royal Flush Plumbing at the time. It's a pretty cool story. It was a traditional service plumber like people that you might know, right? Hot water tanks, leaky sinks, all kinds of work. About 7-8 years ago, his son Mark, my brother-in-law, joined the business, and we realized that we wanted to do something a little more interesting. Plumbing and service work is great, you can make a great living at it, but it is a little monotonous, kind of the same thing all the time. They went to a trade show and saw this technology, which was still a little infancy at the time, called Epoxy pipeline. They decided to invest a significant amount of money, get into this specialized trade. After a couple of years, they realized that this is the niche that we want to do. 4 years ago, we decided to exclusively transition our business solely to pipeline. So we no longer do any service work. We don't even consider ourselves plumbers anymore. We will not touch a water heater, we will not touch a sink. We do not do any of that type of work. We exclusively service sewer lines, vertical stacks, like Joe said. We are an epoxy pipelining company. And we rebranded our business to come different from a little bit of a kind of a homeowner brand to now what our brand is, what you see today with our logo and hopefully you see our trucks. So that's a little bit kind of our story and what we've been doing. We've been lining pipes for 8 years, exclusively for 5. We are the most experienced pipelining company.
What was the name of the company before you became?
It was still Royal Flush, but we obviously added the pipelining brand to it. We had like a deck of cards with the name. So a little more sleek, a little more modern, a little more tech. So let's talk about great realtors. Who thinks they're a great realtor in this room? Hopefully everybody's hands up, maybe? Okay. I have what I think I know is a great realtor, but let's start at this table right here. What do you think is maybe 1 or 2 of the most common traits that goes into being a great realtor?
Having knowledge.
Okay, knowledge. Fantastic. What about you guys?
Responsiveness.
Okay, so attentiveness, responsiveness. What about the back table?
A deep connection of vendors, understanding what the initial problems can be and who can fix them.
Absolutely. So a web of people, right? How about you guys?
Honesty.
Honesty, integrity, very important.
Marrying a great realtor.
That's
my
guy,
Where is
I'm not telling you.
That's my guy.
what about you guys? Any of those traits that we didn't hit on?
A great personal touch and personal connections with your clients.
Sort of the ability to build that trusting relationship, right? And so, for me, I think using all those traits, and the most important thing is being able to bring that deal to the closing table, right? You guys do a lot of work. I think anybody who says, oh, a realtor gets to make their own schedule, that's a lie, right? You guys are doing a lot of work. You're building relationships, building trust, having an amazing wife, creating this knowledge, this web. But if you can't get to the closing table, all that was really just a waste of time and really a lot of frustration, right? I'm sure everybody has been in a deal where they felt they've done steps 1 to 100 and 101, something fell through. So our goal with our information today is just being a tool in that web that can help you get to the closing table if something comes up on a deal, right? Really, that's all we're here for today, is to give you some information and some knowledge that ultimately can bring you guys to the closing table, right? A lot of the same points, having the network of bringing people together, having a depth of knowledge in what we do. So that's hopefully what we're going to bring to you today. When we're looking at a house, I think everybody says these are the big ticket items, right? You're with your buyers or your sellers, you're going through, hey, what's the condition of the roof? Is there holes or shingles coming up? Well, how's the roof look? What do the windows look like? Is the heating system in good condition? What about the electrical panel? These are all things that people think of as a high dollar value. If they're broken, they need to be fixed. This is part of you as being a great realtor negotiating that deal. Hey, are we going to ask for a concession? Are we going to give a price reduction? Are we going to head and absorb that cost knowing that we don't care if we're going to fix it because it's a really competitive deal and we want it, right? These are things that everybody looks at. 99% of people don't know, understand, or look at that sewer line. This can be just as expensive, if not more, than the fixing that roof. So, nobody would ever consciously probably buy a house with a hole in the roof without talking about that or negotiating it, right? It's very easy to see. Why are people buying houses with holes in their pipes? Because they don't know about it, because they can't see it, they can't touch it. But that hole in that pipe can have just as more destructive damage issue as that hole in the roof, right? So kind of pricing is always a hot button issue. I'd say on maybe a general average, depending on the size of the house, any of these fixes are probably $5,000 to $20,000, right? Maybe just a general ballpark. Our services for residential fall into that same price point, depending on the project and the job and the size of the pipe and obviously a lot of different factors. But again, the cost is just the same. How come it's being overlooked? Again, nobody would ever overlook an electrical panel that didn't work, right? We're going to get a proper contractor in to take a look at it to get a quote or an estimate. We're going to negotiate that, or we're going to absorb that cost and realize we're going to fix it in our budget, or we're going to make a price concession. And so these are things that hopefully we can convey to you. It's just the importance of a transaction in a project that you might be overlooking. If a pipe is broken, has anybody had a transaction where they've dealt with a property that the sewer line had an issue or broken, and then this might look familiar? Yes. Tell me a quick story.
Well, my personal home,
Okay.
built on slab in Louisiana, we luckily found out about the pipeline.
Okay, great.
But here in Newport, closed on a property, my clients had house full for 4th of July, everything backed up. And it was a very competitive deal. I recommended this, the seller wouldn't allow it.
Okay. And then did they end up digging and replacing it?
Yes, they did.
Gotcha. Also, it was about maybe in early January. There was a big article in the Newport Daily News about a gentleman who owned a property. They had to dig and replace it, go into the street, cause a big construction project that was about $20,000, right? And so this is what we ultimately avoid. This is one of our big value adds, and I'll explain to you later about what we do. But what we want to avoid is digging this huge entire trench. Our technology is called trenchless technology, right? So if the pipe was broken, you would have to take an excavator, a bulldozer, and imagine this being your property and your pipes here. You're gonna have to physically dig a hole from here, outside of the property, into your front yard, your grass, maybe your beautiful flower beds, maybe your cobblestone driveway, maybe your newly paved driveway, maybe a porch, things that are very expensive, very time consuming. Yes.
And I would like to add, and maybe you're gonna address this, this is not covered by homeowners.
Absolutely not. Yeah, we'll get on that at the end of the question. I want to talk about insurance a little bit. So this is what we avoid doing. This is what our jobs look like when we're done. Same thing as it looked like before. So I want to tell you about the process of what we do. We're passing the samples around. Everybody kind of seen some of the samples? I could talk to you guys for 7 hours about the importance of a camera inspection. Ultimately, if there's one thing that I can convey to you as realtors when you're buying and selling these properties, encourage to get a camera inspection on that pipe. Anytime we talk to anybody in the medical field, it's the same thing as a stent or kind of looking inside your arteries. They love it. Medical people, we talk and they get it right. But taking a camera, looking down that pipe and assessing what's going on, it's the only way you can figure out if that pipe is in fantastic condition or it's the worst pipe you've ever seen. So whether that's with us or any other people, there's lots of great plumbers and contractors in the area who have cameras. You can get the camera inspection with anybody. It doesn't matter. Lisa's got a camera. But get that pipe inspected. The best case, yes.
Is this always sewer, or is this also checking incoming water?
Nope, it's sewer. Yep.
Always sewer.
Incoming water pipes are too small in diameter to get a camera. Yep.
I'm dying for that technology, because that's another big one.
Yes. So get the pipe inspected. The worst thing is, the best case scenario is, there's nothing wrong with the pipe. Right? So peace of mind, comfort. Again, looking at that roof, those shingles are great. They were installed 5 years ago. Great, check it off the list, peace of mind. Get the pipe inspected. So a camera inspection, we're going to look at a job. Somebody calls and say, hey, we think there's an issue. We're selling the home. They've told us they've had some slow backups over the years. We're going to conduct a camera inspection to assess that pipe, and that's how we put together a detailed estimate for the project. If and when we do the project, much like any construction job, you're going to clean and prep that pipe. That pipe might have scale, roots, a lot of nasty debris inside. We use a really fancy tool. It's called a descaling machine. Think of it like a chainsaw inside a pipe. It's going to spin really fast. It's going to clean out all that nasty stuff. Who's got the felt piece passed around? It's right here. Okay. This is what a liner starts as. This is a piece of felt. Think of it as just a long tube sock, right? You start with the felt liner. You impregnate it with a liquid epoxy. think of a fancy kind of paint. And you take this liner and you shoot it down the pipe. You can do any length, 3 feet, 10 feet, 150 feet, 200 feet. You can do any dimension, 3 inches and above, 3 inch, 4 inch, 6 inch. 99% of the properties you're dealing with are 4 and 6 inch pipe. Very, very, very common. And then at the end result, when it cures and dries, that's the green stuff that's left inside. Okay? So you put it down the pipe, then we cure it with ultraviolet light. We have a lot of lovely females in the room. Who likes to get their nails done? Who puts the nails under the light to dry? Same exact technology. Literally, that is ultraviolet light that is having a chemical reaction with the nail polish and drying hard. Anybody had a filling lately? Yes, no, hopefully not. Same type of thing. They put the little light on your filling, they dry it. Same technology. This is a really cool fancy light bulb, and the light has an instant chemical reaction with the epoxy and turns into a rock. So that's the process. It's very high tech, but also very, very simple at the same time. That's kind of how you go through a project and what we do. The most important thing, here's the benefits. Again, if I'm speaking to your homeowner, speaking to you guys now, somebody says, well, hey, besides the fact that I don't want to dig up my yard, why should we use this technology opposed to something else, right? Number one, the most important one is lack of disruption to the property. Again, we're not going to be digging up that new driveway, that new cobblestone, that beautiful flower bed, that grass that person spends thousands and thousands and thousands of years on that looks like polo ground. You don't need to dig it up. 2, you can do any type of pipe. We were talking with Lisa earlier. There's different types of pipes out there. Most common are cast iron, which is that metal pipe that you probably see, that kind of black metal pipe. Clay pipe. Usually those are as it transitions out of the property, turns into clay. Think of art class you guys had in 10th grade when you made clay. It's the same material. There's also another material. Any home built in the 60s or the 70s, it's called pitch fiber, Orangeburg, or asbestos. Again, you guys as realtors come across a lot of asbestos materials, I'm sure, in properties. In the 60s and 70s, they thought this was the greatest material in the world and this pipe would last forever. Well, guess what? It doesn't. So that is very common in 60s and 70s properties as well. But it doesn't matter the type of pipe. Inconsequential. If it's round and it's a pipe, we can fix it and we can line it. Improves flow. So a lot of problems we're having is misaligned joints, right? So maybe the pipe isn't fully damaged or collapsed, but you've got sections of pipes that have shifted over time. You got to think something was installed 75 years ago. That ground starts to shift, and they can create lips. That lip can be a speed bump, as we call it, and can cause paper and debris to get caught up on, and that can cause a backup in the property, right? When we shoot a liner, it's one continuous seamless piece. You know, one big long pipe. So now there are no lips or seams or cracks, right? So it's one continuous piece. It improves the flow. A lot of people, a common question we ask is, well, hey, is my pipe now technically going to be smaller, right? If I had a pipe that's this big and I put a liner, it's going to be smaller. What, right? I'm concerned about the flow. There's no need to be concerned about that. You've got an old pipe that is like speed bumps on a highway. A lot of debris and nasty stuff in there is catching it, and that water and waste is not flowing nice. This is like a water slide. Smooth, seamless piece. This actually improves the flow 15 to 20%. And then the coolest thing I think, is got a 50-year design life. Okay? This is from third-party testing. And again, the original pipes had a 50-year design life. We usually like to say, let's face it, most people who own a home these days are probably 30 or above. As long as you own that property, it's going to live up. It's going to last your lifetime. So it's a true permanent fix.
Do you or your manufacturer have a warranty?
Absolutely. We at Royal Flush have our own 10-year warranty. It's backed by the 50-year design life from our manufacturer. That comes with third-party ASTM testing, literature, and information. So if you have got a customer who's tech-savvy, specific, likes their I's dotted, their T's crossed, we provide our own warranty. We can provide the paperwork from our manufacturer about the design life. Yep. Mm-hmm. So these are the benefits. This is what makes us different from everybody else. Joe touched on some of the projects we've done in the area and some projects that we're really very proud of. Again, we've done St. George's School, Sardella's Restaurant, Gap, Marriott. We've done about 10 different residential properties. These are all within the last 6 months. We are making incredible headway here in Newport with a lot of customers who are obviously having the exact same issues with the old infrastructure, these old pipes. People are starting to have to replace them and fix them, and they're looking for a different solution. Also on our commercial scale, we worked for some pretty cool large institutions that we're very proud of. Hopefully, who's a basketball fan? Hopefully they win tonight. kind of a quick story about this. About 5 years ago, they had built a new Auerbach Center in Boston. Anybody a big Celtics fan here? Basketball fan? And they had a hot tub jacuzzi rehab tub that the pipe in the bottom had a crack on. So this pipe was encased in 6 inches of concrete from the floor below. That was leaking. They were not sure how to fix it. We offered them a solution to line that pipe instead of digging out the hot tub, digging out the concrete, putting a new liner in there, solved their problem. Everybody's maybe or not so maybe fast food restaurant. McDonald's, Titleist, I'm a big golf fan. Dunkin' Donuts, National Grid, Risley. So we've worked with some really major institutions that see the value in our service and what we do.
How does so if you have a misaligned,
Mhm.
two pieces of pipe that are misaligned, how does that get realigned with?
It depends on how much the misalignment is. Yep. So another thing to convey, by no means is our service a fix for every single solid-grade pipe. Every single pipe is different. That's the importance of that camera inspection. If the pipes are misaligned more than 50%, lining doesn't make sense. One, our liner is not going to go through it, but two, that's too much of an offset that's there. Anything more that's less than 25%, that liner can jump that and create a smooth out that gap of that misalignment and create that water slide. So even though there's a bump there, it's a soft bump that the waste and water will flow over. Yep. But again, every single project is this project that we show up at that we would love the opportunity to do, and we say, hey, your pipe isn't too bad a shape. This joint is an issue. Maybe you do need to dig at a specific spot to repair, right? So again, every project, that's what the camera inspection is going to go ahead and do. To kind of just recap, we've talked about it, but our ask is get the video inspection. Joe talked about the average house being $660,000. Okay. What if they just bought that $660,000 house and they move in and 2 weeks later there is literally shit in the basement? Now, a lot of people in that scenario, I'm sure we've all had customers here that have been upset and called their realtor afterwards and say, how come you didn't suggest this to me? Has anybody had that happen in the past? Right? They think that realtors know everything, which of course we don't, right? We don't. But they look for you for guidance and trust. These are some of the things that we talked about that separates it. And we don't want to be in the position where you could have suggested to somebody and if they turn it down, of course, that's no big deal. But again, $300 in the scheme of $660,000 is nothing. And then if anybody uncovers an issue, just give us a call. A lot of times we can talk through some things on the phone. You can explain some things to me. I can maybe answer an ease or concern of a customer. A lot of questions you're getting, what are some signs of a slow draining pipe? These types of things. So we love having conversations with people. Ultimately, we're always going to encourage and ask them, hey, let's set up the camera inspection. Let's get the video. Let's get the evidence to see what's going on. But we can talk through a lot of things.